You're not stuck, you're a victim of the productivity trap. Is there a quiet hum beneath the surface of your days, a persistent whisper that urges you forward, demanding more? It's the sound of the clock ticking, the notifications pinging, the endless scroll of achievements, both your own and those curated for you by the world. We live in an era that has elevated busyness to a virtue, where our worth is often measured by the sheer volume of tasks we complete, the projects we launch, the goals we conquer. We are told, implicitly and explicitly, that to be still is to be unproductive, to be idle is to be a failure. This relentless pursuit, this ingrained belief that we must constantly be doing, has woven itself so tightly into the fabric of our lives that it often feels like an immutable law of nature. But what if this perceived necessity, this urgent drive to produce, is not an inherent truth about our existence, but rather a carefully constructed cage? What if the very framework we have accepted as the path to fulfillment has, in fact, become a trap, subtly stealing our agency and leaving us feeling perpetually behind, perpetually insufficient? Consider the feeling when you finally achieve a long sought-after goal. The initial elation, the brief sigh of relief, often gives way to a quick scan of the horizon for the next thing. It's as if the finish line is merely a waypoint, a brief pause before the race restarts, only this time with even higher stakes and a more demanding pace. This cycle, so familiar to many, breeds a peculiar kind of exhaustion, a weariness that isn't simply physical but deeply existential. It's the exhaustion of feeling like you're constantly running on a treadmill, expending immense energy but never truly arriving anywhere new. We are praised for our hustle, lauded for our grind, and in turn, we internalize this message, believing that our value is directly proportional to our output. This narrative, however, overlooks a crucial element, the subtle erosion of our own inner landscape, the quiet sacrifice of presence for the illusion of progress. This isn't about advocating for indolence or a complete rejection of effort. Far from it. It's about questioning the why and the how of our ceaselessness, and recognizing that the prevailing societal obsession with productivity might be a sophisticated form of self-deception, a way to avoid confronting deeper, more uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our existence. We are so conditioned to measure our worth by external validation, by the tangible results of our labor, that we often fail to recognize the profound value in simply being. We become so focused on the destination, on the next milestone, that we forget to experience the journey, to savor the present moment, to truly connect with ourselves and the world around us. This script seeks to explore that very disconnect, to peel back the layers of this pervasive productivity imperative and ask, what if the feeling of being stuck, of being overwhelmed, isn't a sign of personal failing, but a symptom of being ensnared by a cultural narrative that prioritizes output over essence? What if, by constantly striving to do more, we are inadvertently preventing ourselves from truly being? This exploration is an invitation to step outside the relentless hum, to question the dogma of constant activity, and to consider that perhaps, just perhaps, the most profound forms of progress begin not with more doing, but with a deeper understanding of ourselves and the quiet power of presence. This pervasive drive for constant output, this glorification of the grind, often stems from a deeply ingrained fear of irrelevance. In a world that rapidly discards the old for the new, we feel compelled to constantly demonstrate our value, to prove we are still necessary, still contributing, still ahead. This anxiety manifests as a relentless filling of every available moment, an almost pathological aversion to stillness. Consider the phenomenon of checking out during a conversation, not because you're disengaged emotionally, but because your mind is already racing ahead, drafting an email, planning the next task, or mentally rehearsing a presentation. This isn't simply multitasking, it's a form of internal displacement, a voluntary exile from the present in service of a future that is always just out of reach. Furthermore, this trap is amplified by the curated realities presented on social media. We are bombarded with images of hyper-productive individuals, their lives seemingly a seamless cascade of accomplishments. These carefully constructed narratives create an illusion of effortless success, a benchmark against which we inevitably measure our own, often messier, realities. The result is a subtle but powerful pressure to conform, to adopt the outward appearance of perpetual motion, even when internally we feel depleted. We might, for instance, feel compelled to respond to emails late at night or work through lunch, not because it's truly necessary for our professional success, but because we perceive it as the expected behavior in our hyper-competitive environments. This external validation, this need to appear productive, becomes a more potent motivator than genuine engagement or personal well-being. Building on this, however, is the insidious way this trap can masquerade as self-improvement. We reframe our constant busyness as personal growth, our frantic activity as a sign of ambition. We might join another online course, acquire another skill, or dive into another networking event, all in the name of becoming better. While self-development is undoubtedly valuable, when it becomes a perpetual motion machine, an endless series of additions without any space for integration or reflection, it ceases to be growth and transforms into a form of avoidance. It's akin to constantly adding new books to a library without ever reading the ones already on the shelves. The sheer volume of potential knowledge becomes a burden, a testament to what we should be doing, rather than a source of actual wisdom. Consequently, this cycle can significantly diminish our capacity for genuine creativity and innovation. True insight rarely emerges from a state of frantic activity. It often blossoms in moments of quiet contemplation, in the unexpected pauses between tasks, in the unstructured expanse of an afternoon where the mind is allowed to wander freely. When every moment is accounted for, when our schedules are packed tighter than a sardine can, we starve the very wellsprings of original thought. Think of the famous anecdote of Archimedes' Eureka moment, which occurred not in a laboratory during rigorous experimentation, but while he was relaxing in a bath. This wasn't a coincidence. It highlights how our subconscious minds often work on problems when we deliberately step away from the task at hand, allowing for a different, more associative mode of thinking to take hold. Another crucial layer is the impact on our relationships. When we are perpetually preoccupied with our own to-do lists, our own deadlines, our own perceived need to produce, we often become less present for the people in our lives. A simple dinner with a loved one can be overshadowed by the mental ticking off of tasks, the anticipation of the next obligation. This isn't necessarily malicious. It's a consequence of being so deeply ingrained in the productivity mindset that we struggle to fully inhabit the present moment, to give our undivided attention to those who matter most. It's the subtle but persistent feeling that we are not quite there, even when our physical bodies are present, a quiet distraction that can erode connection over time, leaving us feeling both busy and strangely alone. The allure of this productivity paradigm is also deeply rooted in a societal devaluation of contemplation and a misplaced emphasis on external validation. We often equate visible effort with inherent worth, overlooking the profound internal shifts that occur in periods of quiet reflection. Think about the sculptor who spends hours simply observing the raw marble, not yet touching it with a chisel, but allowing its form and potential to reveal itself. This phase, crucial for the final masterpiece, might appear unproductive to an outsider, yet it is the very foundation of the creative act. Similarly, our own lives require these periods of non-doing, of simply being with our thoughts and feelings, to truly understand what we want to create. Conversely, the relentless pursuit of task completion can foster a superficial engagement with our work and our lives. When the primary goal is simply to get it done, the opportunity for deep learning, for genuine mastery, or for uncovering novel solutions is often sacrificed. Consider a student who rushes through assigned readings, highlighting sentences without truly absorbing their meaning, simply to tick a box. This approach might satisfy the immediate requirement, but it fundamentally undermines the deeper purpose of education, the cultivation of understanding and critical thinking. This pattern repeats in our professional lives, where we might churn out reports or complete projects with an eye solely on the deadline, missing the chance to innovate or to truly refine our craft. This manufactured urgency also erodes our capacity for authentic joy and presence. When every moment is scheduled and optimized for future gain, the simple pleasures of the present become easily overlooked. Picture a parent who, while playing with their child, is mentally drafting a grocery list or planning their next work call. The child's laughter, the shared moment of connection, is experienced through a veil of distraction. This isn't a failure of love or intention, it's a consequence of being so conditioned to prioritize future productivity that the present moment, with all its inherent richness, is rendered secondary. The joy derived from these immediate experiences is diminished, replaced by the anxious anticipation of what must be done next. Moreover, this productivity trap fosters a deep-seated fear of imperfection. The drive to constantly produce, to always be doing, often leads to an avoidance of tasks that are inherently messy, uncertain, or that carry the risk of failure. We gravitate towards the easily quantifiable, the tasks that offer clear metrics of success, and shy away from the more ambiguous, yet potentially more rewarding, endeavors. This can manifest as a reluctance to start a passion project because the outcome isn't guaranteed, or an avoidance of engaging in deep, potentially challenging conversations that might lead to discomfort. We become so focused on the output that we lose sight of the process, and in doing so, we limit our potential for genuine growth and discovery, both personally and professionally. The cultural scaffolding that elevates constant productivity often rests on a foundation of performance anxiety, a deep-seated dread of falling short, not just in the eyes of others, but in our own estimation. This anxiety fuels the need to fill every moment, lest a void appear that might expose our perceived inadequacies. Consider the phenomenon of busyness as a shield, where individuals actively deflect inquiries about their well-being by simply stating how swamped or slammed they are. This isn't necessarily a cry for help, but a strategic deployment of busyness to avoid deeper introspection or vulnerability. It's a way to present a facade of constant engagement, thereby sidestepping the discomfort of acknowledging personal struggles or simply the need for rest. This constant outward projection of activity becomes a defense mechanism, preventing us from confronting the unsettling possibility that perhaps, without the constant hum of tasks, we might not feel as substantial. Furthermore, this trap is deeply intertwined with a distorted understanding of personal growth. We often equate the acquisition of new skills or knowledge with genuine progress, forgetting that true growth involves integration, assimilation, and sometimes, the shedding of old habits or beliefs. The pressure to constantly learn and adapt, while seemingly positive, can lead to a superficial accumulation of information without the cultivation of wisdom. Think of the individual who attends countless workshops and seminars, collecting certificates and business cards, yet struggles to apply any of the learned principles in their daily life. This approach treats personal development like a shopping spree, accumulating items without truly understanding their utility or purpose, ultimately leaving one feeling more overwhelmed than enriched. Building upon this, the very definition of value in our society has become intrinsically linked to output. We are conditioned to believe that our worth is quantifiable, measured by the number of emails answered, the projects completed, or the hours logged. This external validation loop makes it incredibly difficult to detach our sense of self-esteem from our productivity metrics. Imagine an artist who, after a period of creative block, finally produces a piece they are deeply proud of, even if it took them longer than anticipated and involved significant experimentation. If their self-worth is tied to rapid production, they might feel a sense of inadequacy, overlooking the profound internal transformation and artistic deepening that occurred during that unproductive period. The true value lay not in the speed of creation, but in the fidelity to the artistic process and the courage to explore. Consequently, this relentless focus on doing can significantly diminish our capacity for serendipity and meaningful connection. When our calendars are meticulously scheduled and our days are rigidly structured, there is little room for spontaneous encounters or unplanned moments of genuine human interaction. Consider a social gathering where everyone is preoccupied with checking their phones or mentally running through their evening's to-do list. The potential for authentic conversation, for shared laughter, or for the unexpected formation of a new friendship is stifled by this pervasive preoccupation with future tasks. The richness of human experience often lies in these unscripted moments, the very moments that the productivity trap systematically eliminates. Conversely, the glorification of ceaseless activity can foster a culture of burnout disguised as dedication. We are encouraged to see exhaustion as a badge of honor, a testament to our commitment and drive. This narrative actively discourages rest, framing it as a luxury rather than a necessity for sustained well-being and peak performance. Think of the entrepreneur who proudly declares they sleep when they're dead, or the student who pulls all-nighters fueled by caffeine and sheer will. While admirable in its intensity, this approach often leads to diminishing returns, impaired judgment, and ultimately, a breakdown in both physical and mental health. The illusion of perpetual motion ultimately leads to a catastrophic halt. Moreover, This trap subtly undermines our inherent sense of playfulness and curiosity. When every waking moment is dedicated to achieving a goal or completing a task, the natural human inclination towards exploration, experimentation, and simple enjoyment gets suppressed. Imagine a child who is constantly being directed to learn or practice rather than simply allowed to play and discover. While structured learning has its place, an overemphasis on productivity can stifle the very joy of discovery that fuels genuine, lifelong learning. The inherent drive to understand and explore is replaced by a more external, task-oriented motivation, transforming what should be an engaging process into a chore. The pervasive cultural narrative of productivity often fosters a subtle yet damaging form of existential escapism. By constantly immersing ourselves in a whirlwind of tasks and goals, we can inadvertently sidestep the more profound, often unsettling, questions about meaning, purpose, and our own mortality. This isn't about shirking responsibility, but rather about the unconscious tendency to use busyness as a distraction from the inherent uncertainties and existential angst that are part of the human condition. Consider the individual who, upon facing a significant life change or a personal loss, immediately throws themselves into an ambitious new project or an exhaustive work schedule. While this activity can provide temporary solace and a sense of control, it often prevents the necessary work of processing grief, integrating the experience, and redefining one's life path. The productivity becomes a form of self-imposed anesthesia, numbing the deeper emotional and philosophical inquiries that are crucial for genuine growth. Furthermore, this trap cultivates a tyranny of the urgent over the important. Our days become dominated by immediate demands, the ringing phone, the urgent email, the looming deadline, pushing aside the activities that truly contribute to our long-term well-being, our deepest values, or our most significant relationships. Think of the professional who consistently prioritizes responding to client inquiries over dedicating time to strategic planning or professional development. While responsiveness is important, an over-reliance on reacting to immediate pressures can lead to a slow drift away from core objectives, a gradual erosion of long-term vision. This constant state of reaction, driven by the perceived need to be productive now, can leave us feeling busy but ultimately unfulfilled, as the truly important, albeit less urgent, aspects of our lives are perpetually deferred. This relentless pursuit can also lead to a hollowing out of our inner lives, a diminishment of our capacity for introspection and self-awareness. When every moment is accounted for and optimized, there is little space for the quiet contemplation that allows us to understand our own motivations, desires, and emotional landscapes. Imagine a writer who, instead of allowing for periods of creative gestation and thoughtful reflection on their narrative, feels compelled to churn out content daily, regardless of inspiration or depth. This approach, while maintaining a consistent output, can lead to a superficiality in their work, a lack of genuine insight, and an alienation from their own creative wellspring. The inner world, the source of true originality and personal meaning, is neglected in favor of external validation and a quantifiable stream of activity. Building on this, the societal emphasis on productivity can inadvertently foster a sense of profound isolation. While we may be constantly connected digitally, the pressure to perform and achieve often discourages vulnerability and the sharing of struggles. The image of the successful, hyper-productive individual often omits the messy realities of doubt, failure, and the need for support. Consider the entrepreneur who, driven by the need to appear strong and in control, avoids seeking advice or admitting to challenges, thereby isolating themselves from potential collaborators and mentors. This self-imposed solitude, born from the fear that admitting difficulty equates to a lack of productivity, deprives us of the rich tapestry of human connection that arises from shared vulnerability and mutual support. Moreover, this productivity trap can lead to a misunderstanding of genuine rest. We often mistake passive distraction, like endlessly scrolling through social media or binge-watching television, for true recuperation. These activities, while offering a temporary escape, rarely provide the deep rejuvenation that comes from genuine downtime, mindfulness, or engaging in activities that nourish the soul. Think of the individual who, after a grueling work week, spends their entire weekend glued to a screen, only to feel drained and unrefreshed come Monday morning. True rest involves a conscious disengagement from the demands of productivity, allowing the mind and body to truly recover and reset, rather than simply substituting one form of mental stimulation for another. This pervasive drive for productivity, when unchecked, can subtly warp our perception of autonomy. We may believe we are masters of our own schedules, meticulously planning and executing our days. However, this illusion often crumbles when we realize how deeply our actions are dictated by external pressures, societal expectations, employer demands, or the perceived need to keep pace with peers. Consider the subtle coercion inherent in a workplace culture that implicitly rewards constant availability, or the unspoken pressure to always be on, even outside of traditional working hours. This isn't genuine self-direction, it's a performance of control, a carefully managed adherence to a script written by others. The freedom we feel is often merely the freedom to choose how we fulfill the externally imposed obligations, rather than the freedom to define what those obligations should be in the first place. We become like skilled artisans, meticulously crafting our assigned product, but rarely questioning the design or purpose of the object itself. Furthermore, the constant pursuit of more can lead to a profound stagnation of personal values. When our energy is perpetually channeled into task completion and goal achievement, there is little mental bandwidth left to question whether these goals align with our deepest convictions. Imagine an individual who relentlessly pursues career advancement, driven by societal definitions of success, only to discover later that this path has alienated them from their core values of community or creativity. The productivity trap, in this instance, acts as a powerful diversion, allowing us to avoid the potentially uncomfortable work of self-examination and value clarification. We become so adept at doing that we lose touch with being, with understanding what truly matters to us at a fundamental level. This can result in a life lived on autopilot, a series of accomplished tasks that, upon reflection, feel hollow because they were never truly aligned with our authentic selves. Building on this, the phenomenon can also foster a distorted sense of personal progress. We often equate outward activity with inward development, assuming that being busy equates to growing. However, true progress often involves periods of quiet consolidation, of integrating new experiences and insights, which can appear as inactivity to an observer, or even to oneself. Think of a gardener who spends weeks tending to soil, planting seeds, and watering, all before any visible shoots emerge. This crucial, yet outwardly uneventful, phase is essential for growth. Similarly, significant personal development often occurs in moments of stillness, reflection, or even perceived idleness, where the seeds of change are germinating beneath the surface. The productivity trap, however, trains us to distrust these quieter phases, urging us to always be actively pruning, digging, or fertilizing, even when the natural rhythm of growth calls for patience and observation. Consequently, this relentless focus on output can significantly undermine our capacity for authentic presence. When our minds are constantly anticipating the next task or replaying past activities, we are effectively absent from the current moment. Consider the experience of sharing a meal with someone whose attention is clearly divided, their gaze drifting to their phone or their thoughts seemingly elsewhere. This divided presence, a direct byproduct of the productivity imperative, erodes the quality of our interactions and diminishes the richness of shared experiences. The present moment, with its unique opportunities for connection and engagement, is sacrificed on the altar of future accomplishment. We become so invested in the idea of what we should be doing that we fail to truly inhabit the reality of what is. Moreover, the trap can lead to a devaluation of the process itself. When the sole focus is on the end result, the journey, the learning, the experimentation, the overcoming of obstacles, becomes secondary, or even an impediment to be rushed through. Imagine a musician who is so fixated on perfecting a final performance that they rush through the practice sessions, missing the subtle nuances and the joy of musical exploration. This focus on outcome over process can lead to a superficial mastery, a lack of deep understanding, and a diminished appreciation for the craft itself. The very activities that could lead to genuine skill development and personal satisfaction are devalued because they do not immediately contribute to the desired output. This relentless pressure to perform can also breed a subtle form of creative paralysis. When the emphasis is solely on producing a tangible outcome, the messy, exploratory phase of creation, the experimentation, the false starts, the deliberate deviations from the plan, can be perceived as wasted time. Think of a musician who, in their eagerness to finish a song, bypasses the improvisation exercises that could unlock entirely new melodic ideas. The fear of not producing something tangible can override the willingness to explore the unknown, leading to work that is technically proficient but lacks genuine innovation or soul. This isn't about a lack of skill, but a lack of permission granted to oneself to engage in the nonlinear, often inefficient, process that true creativity demands. We become so focused on the destination that we neglect the very exploration that could lead to a more profound and original arrival. Furthermore, the productivity trap can significantly exacerbate feelings of inadequacy and imposter syndrome. When we constantly compare our internal reality of effort and output with the polished, output-driven successes of others, it's easy to feel like we are perpetually falling short. This comparison is amplified by the fact that most people showcase. The relentless pursuit of productivity can also foster a peculiar form of temporal displacement, where our present experience is perpetually overshadowed by future obligations or past regrets. We are so conditioned to optimize for what's next that we struggle to inhabit the now. Consider the phenomenon of future gazing during a conversation, not in a hopeful, aspirational way, but in a grim, task-oriented manner. You might be listening to a friend recount their day, yet your mind is already drafting a response to an email that landed in your inbox an hour ago, or mentally cataloging the groceries you need to buy after this interaction. This isn't mere distraction, it's a habitual deferral of presence, a subconscious belief that the real value lies in what is yet to be done, rather than what is happening. Consequently, our lived moments become mere stepping stones, stripped of their intrinsic richness, their potential for genuine connection or spontaneous joy sacrificed for the sake of future efficiency. This temporal dislocation leaves us feeling perpetually rushed, as if life is a race against a clock that is always ticking too fast, even when we are technically at rest. Furthermore, this ingrained productivity mindset can subtly erode our intuitive decision-making processes. When every choice is framed through the lens of efficiency and measurable output, we often bypass the gut feelings or subconscious insights that guide us towards more fulfilling paths. Picture someone facing a career crossroads. Instead of allowing for a period of quiet contemplation, of listening to that inner nudge that might suggest a less conventional, perhaps less immediately productive, but ultimately more aligned direction, they might instead opt for the path that promises the quickest advancement or the most quantifiable return. This reliance on external metrics over internal wisdom can lead to decisions that, while seemingly logical on paper, ultimately leave us feeling disconnected from our own desires and values. We train ourselves to prioritize the easily demonstrable over the deeply felt, effectively silencing our inner compass in favor of a rigid, externalized roadmap. Another crucial layer to this trap is the way it can foster a superficial engagement with leisure. True rest and rejuvenation are not simply the absence of work, they involve activities that actively replenish our energy and nourish our spirit. However, when our minds are conditioned to always be doing something productive, even our downtime can become a source of anxiety. We might feel guilty for simply relaxing, or we might fill our leisure time with activities that mimic work, learning a new language with the sole aim of adding it to a CV, or engaging in a hobby primarily for its potential to be monetized. This inversion of leisure, turning it into another arena for productivity, defeats its very purpose. It's like trying to quench a thirst with salt water. The act of consumption only deepens the underlying need. Consequently, this constant orientation towards future output can lead to a profound disconnection from the physical self. Our bodies, with their inherent needs for rest, movement, and nourishment, often become secondary to the demands of our mental to-do lists. Consider the individual who consistently skips meals to meet a deadline, or who neglects physical activity in favor of more screen time. This disregard for our somatic intelligence, our body's innate wisdom about what it needs to function optimally, creates a fundamental imbalance. We become disembodied minds, driving ourselves relentlessly forward while our physical selves signal distress that goes unheeded. This dissociation not only impacts our physical health, but also disconnects us from the grounding presence that a healthy relationship with our bodies can provide, further fueling the cycle of anxiety and overwhelm. Reflecting on this intricate tapestry of thought, we begin to perceive how the relentless emphasis on outward achievement, on the ceaseable accumulation of tasks and goals, has subtly reshaped not just our schedules, but the very contours of our inner lives. The threads we've examined, the quiet anxieties that fuel perpetual motion, the societal metrics that redefine our worth, the subtle erosion of genuine presence, the distortion of personal growth, and the profound disconnection from our own embodied wisdom, all converge to paint a compelling picture. It's as if we've been diligently constructing a magnificent edifice, brick by painstaking brick, only to realize, in the quiet moments between the hammering and the hoisting, that the blueprint itself might have been flawed, leading us not to a sanctuary of fulfillment, but to an elaborate, self-imposed confinement. The constant hum of activity, once a perceived engine of progress, now resonates with a different frequency, one that speaks of a deeper, more fundamental yearning left unaddressed. As we pivot towards the final reflection, consider the cumulative effect of this pervasive cultural narrative. It's akin to a finely tuned instrument that, despite its intricate design and the skill of its player, is tuned to a key that is subtly, almost imperceptibly, off. The notes are played correctly, the rhythm is precise, yet the overall harmony feels dissonant, failing to resonate with the deepest chords of our being. The journey thus far has illuminated the architecture of this dissonance, revealing how the very structures we have erected to ensure success and validation may, in fact, be the primary architects of our feeling of being perpetually stuck, of being caught in a cycle that promises arrival but perpetually defers it. The insights gathered suggest a re-evaluation, not of effort, but of direction, not of ambition, but of its often unexamined source and its ultimate destination. The pathway ahead beckons not with a call for more doing, but for a discerning reorientation of our focus, a gentle recalibration of our internal compass. The journey through the labyrinth of productivity has revealed a subtle yet profound truth. The feeling of being inextricably stuck is often not a reflection of our inherent limitations, but a symptom of our willing entrapment within a cultural narrative that prizes relentless output above all else. We have been conditioned to believe that our value is synonymous with our velocity, that stillness is a prelude to stagnation, and that every waking moment must be accounted for in the ledger of achievement. This sedentary-driven existence, however, has a cost, a quiet erosion of our presence, a dimming of our inner light, and a profound disconnect from the very essence of a life well lived. The relentless pursuit of more has, paradoxically, left us feeling less present, less connected, and ultimately, less ourselves. This is not a call to abandon effort or to dismiss the value of diligent work. Rather, it is an invitation to a more discerning engagement with our own energy and intentions. It is an acknowledgement that true progress is not always measured in the sheer volume of tasks completed, but in the depth of our engagement, the alignment of our actions with our core values, and the cultivation of our inner landscape. The productivity trap ensnares us by convincing us that external validation, derived from constant doing, is the ultimate measure of worth. Yet, what if our greatest potential lies not in perpetually adding to our list, but in the courageous act of discerning what truly matters, and then dedicating ourselves to those pursuits with presence and intention? The true practice begins now, not with a new task to conquer, but with a quiet act of re-evaluation. It is in the intentional cultivation of moments of stillness, not as a reward for hard work, but as an essential element of a balanced and meaningful existence. It is in the courage to question the external metrics that dictate our worth, and to instead listen to the quieter, more authentic whispers of our own inner wisdom. By stepping back from the relentless hum, by allowing for pauses and reflections, we can begin to dismantle the cage of our own making. We can reclaim our time, not to fill it with more busyness, but to imbue it with greater presence, deeper connection, and a more authentic sense of purpose. The feeling of being stuck is a signal, an invitation to explore a different path, one where our worth is not measured by our output, but by the quality of our being, the depth of our connections, and the integrity with which we inhabit each unfolding moment. This is the quiet revolution, the profound shift from merely doing to truly living.